This is a really exciting opportunity for us to talk about resident engagement, something that has been at the heart of our development work in Spartanburg. So I echo Evan's point. I'm biased that I think you made the right decision to stay with us this afternoon, not because of what I will say, but what you will hear from the three folks on the panel. I consider the folks that I'm working with on this section the real champions of this work. They are folks who live in Northside every single day. And for Debbie and I, for example, we go way back, almost 2 decades of organizing work together. And to have the opportunity and the pleasure to work with them on a daily basis is something that's very important. So I thought I might start off with just a little bit about what's in store for today and for this hour that we have. Although I jokingly said that the next session is in here so that we can go as long as we want and just keep having a good time, and they'll have to wait on us to get started. So the meeting organizers did not appreciate that comment very well. So we'll keep to an hour. But we're going to talk a little bit about the citizen engagement and resident engagement work we did. We're going to give you the opportunity to ask our Voyagers some questions. I will tell you, don't hesitate to ask the hard questions. We can handle it. We've asked them of ourselves. And then we're going to do some work at the table, because I think at these sessions it's really important for us not only to think about what other people have done, but to take the opportunity to think about what kinds of work you might need to do in your community about resident engagement. In particular, what other chance do you have in a safe, friendly environment to think about it and have 3 experts be able to talk about and give you feedback? So that's what we're going to do today. I want to talk a little bit about Northside Development Group and who we are. We're, as Purpose Built claims, a lead organization. Our commitment is to create a safe, strong, and thriving Northside for generations to come. We got started as a land bank and decided to focus our work in Northside. Give you a little bit of context. Our area is 400 acres. Northside has a poverty rate of 65%. 46% of Northside is vacant, but it is home to many more folks just like the 3 you'll meet today who are dedicated to making Northside a place where everyone who lives there now chooses to stay, and those folks who have a choice where they move will choose to live there. So it's really exciting for us. I want to talk a little bit about why we decided to start with resident engagement. And I think both the conversation that Angela just had and also the plenary we heard with Brian Stevenson and also even the earlier morning session on justice really set the stage. Mr. Stevenson said something that I thought was really interesting. He talked about proximity. And being close to folks. And really, our work is about relationships. If we're going to be successful, it's going to take really strong key relationships. When we started this project, we wanted to be different. Let's be honest. Angela talked about wading into communities with your own answers as opposed to listening to answers, and how that possibility really isn't going to work. We wanted to do our work with residents and not to them. And let's be honest with ourselves. Those of us who have been in community development work for a long time, we have not done ourselves any favors based on history of coming into communities and saying, oh, trust us, we got this, we've got your best interest in mind. We really wanted to be different and to be able to start with the neighborhood. How we did it, we started with folks that were already engaged and asked them if they would be interested in getting a bit deeper involved. So we went ahead and started with those that were already presenting themselves as leaders and asked them to create other neighbors. These are 3 of 10 Voyagers who went through a 6-month summer training on leadership development. I will tell you that leadership development focused less on providing them skills, but more on them sharing their own leadership skills and honing those to be the perfect match for what we need in the community. And so, it's also interesting to think about what do the Voyagers do for us now, and how do we interact. Every decision that we make as an organization gets vetted through the residents to make sure that it's in the same vision, the same ideal that they want to see in Northside. When new groups come and you all do this work, you know that when you get a little bit of momentum, everybody wants to work in your neighborhood. When folks come with new programs, we often say, you know what, you're going to have to come to the 3rd Thursday meeting of the Voyagers in our office and run that idea by them and see how they think about it before we make any commitment of new programmatic efforts. This has served us well, and has created a buy-in and a trust between us too, because let's be honest, this is really about trust and accountability. So I had the pleasure of sitting down with these folks, as I do quite often, and asking them about what they thought was important to this work. And so as we get started, I'm going to ask them some questions, and then I'm going to give you all the opportunity to also ask some questions, and then we'll work together. So I hope you're really thinking about some of those. I'm going to start off with Tony, sitting in the middle. Tony is also the president of the Northside Neighborhood Association. But when Tony and I and the rest of the Voyagers sat down and talked about it, Tony really wanted to talk about, the thing that what residents can offer to work that we're doing, this work of transforming communities. So Tony, would you talk a little bit about that concept of how you see what residents offer to the greater picture that is community transformation work?
Okay, well, when we started out, and I was thankful so much for the fact that, we had our partners come in and said they wanted to work with the community. So for me, it was a matter of assessing what skills and what we had in our community. It's a large community. It's not as large as it once was, but we had to find out what we had. So we as the Voyagers went about assessing the skills in our community of what the people did. So we took our time, we came up with a format with a lot of questions about what we had in our community for future reference. So we took that, we called it our skill sets. And we had a meeting, we invited the entire community out, and they came, and we gave them the forms. And by the way, this is an ongoing thing. It's not just something that we did once. It's an ongoing thing. As the community grows and changes, it's ongoing. So we took those forms and we handed them out, and we asked the people to give us, let us know what their skill sets were. We want to know what do we have in our community, what the people could do in our community, whether it was baking, lawn care, gardening, babysitting. We didn't care if you had computer skills, but we wanted to know what skill sets existed in our community. And we took those forms and we did it, passed them around, and like I said, it's an ongoing thing. And we put that information in the database. So in the future, when job opportunities come forward, and there's an opportunity for those people in this community to get employment, we can refer to them and we say, look, we got something for you. And that was very important for us because we have those hidden talents throughout our community, and we had to identify them.
Excellent. When we met, Phoenix talked a lot about the residents' ability to get stuff done. And she also talked a lot about how it's really not about counting stuff. And we heard Dr. Shonkoff talk this morning about our sometimes obsession with counting stuff as opposed to just getting stuff done. And Phoenix, when we talked about it, you talked about the importance of relationships and how that interacts. Would you mind sharing some of your thoughts on that sort of topic?
Certainly, because it's so vital that we realize that businesses does have that way of counting and measuring everything and outcomes of this and outcomes of that. But what we're measuring is something against people who are relationship people, things that you don't put a deadline on. And one of the beautiful thing about this is that our team, our partners, they're making sure that, they may need to chop, but you're working with residents and families that's not on that same measure, and they have made a conscious effort to decide not to go further just because they have this chop, count, and measure. It's like we're dealing with real people, real time, and we need not move forward until it is time. So everything is not timely and does not have a deadline. And that has meant the world to all of us, because with our questionings, with our concerns and our fears that happens when someone comes in and does something to you, all of that is it's sort of dispersed out of the whole picture. And therefore, as we were talking this morning about having things done to you and then fearing what's going to happen, this wasn't what was going on. We have a relationship, and our partners totally understand that. And those who came before us, we're learning. We're taking the time to go back and reflect. Is this working or is this not working? And then moving forward so we don't repeat these fears, I should say.
It's great. I just want to add something when we think about how important that relationship is. I'll never forget attending a neighborhood association meeting, and it was right after Northside Development Group had been purchasing lots of properties. and a lot of the dilapidated structures we had started to demolish those. And I had heard through some of our Voyagers that one of the young residents in the community had come to her and said, "Grandmother, when are they going to come and tear our house down?" And there was a great fear of that. And I said, you know what, we've got to address that at the neighborhood association meeting and get those fears out in the open. And I will tell you that I went to the neighborhood association meeting and I asked folks, please, this is open forum, tell us what your fears are. And it was about as silent as this room. And one of the Voyagers asked me to sit down and set up. Now, so really, let's talk about what our fears were. And the flip chart had, miles of options on it. This is about relationships, but it's also about making sure that the folks that experience the problems are those that are in the driver's seat to develop the solutions. And for us, that's critical to the work. And one thing that we cannot mention enough, it's one thing that we cannot take for granted and need to make sure that those that we are trying to improve their outcome are part of the solution. So when we thought about that and we're getting ready for this session, one of the things that's very important to Debbie is strategies for relocation. And making sure, we often say that we want no one, anybody that wants to stick around in Northside and create a better life for themselves, we often say we want them to have that opportunity. And so Debbie Moore not only is a Voyager, but she also serves on Northside Development Group's board of directors. And I can tell you, when we're talking about things in the neighborhood, relocation is always the first question that Ms. Moore asks. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about why you think that's so important and why you think it's critical for our success as we move forward in engaging residents. Ms. Moore?
Thank you. First of all, I've been in the community for many, many, many years. I won't go any further than that. But I have a passion of being an advocate for people, period. And one of my biggest concerns is when change comes about with anybody, there's always resistance. But to add to that, when change comes about and you have a relationship with someone, you have a relationship in your community with people, then it helps to make a difference when you're communicating with them. And as someone who served on the committee to assess and come up with, to narrow down who the developer would be for our neighborhood, that's one of the key questions I ask, because I want to be an advocate for our people in the community, no matter what race, who they were. And so my concern was, how are you going to transition people? Will they, I didn't want people to be set up to fail. And there were people who actually were on, you had elderly, they were on a fixed income. They were used to a certain amount. They were used to making it from month to month on their bills. And so in budgeting, they wouldn't have any extra when they had to move out, and then they were surprised with an additional bill. So I wanted to I talked to the developers, and they assured me that that's one of their concerns were too. That helped me pick them. We had good developers anyway, but the one I picked, Columbia Residential, along with my team, we all agreed that was awesome. But in the process, not only did the Columbia Residential, our supporters, those who did the planning, those who are donating finances, all of our people who are doing planning in our community, they had the same concerns, and that made me feel even better. So what we wanted to know is, I wanted the step-by-step process of what would take place, because neighbors and residents in your community, they don't need any surprises. There needs to be transparency, period. And if you're not honest, they're gonna know it. They'll see it on your faces. If you don't bring in someone that knows someone in the community and you begin to develop a relationship with them, which is a process, they will know it. We have residents from all walks of life. We have some that need additional training. We have some that are not educated as well as others. We have some whose income is extremely low, but they have enough sense to know when you're real. And that's going to be for people all across the board. And so we invited, once we found out the process, all the Voyagers would come together and we would go and talk to different members of the community. We were on different streets, so we did it sort of like block captains, and sometimes we overlapped. But it didn't hurt to be able to share that information more than once so that the residents would get an idea of what was going on and they would feel comfortable about it. And so in that process, we explained to them what would happen. It cut down on fears. This was a fear factor here. And so in talking to them, getting them to understand that they would be monitored, they would receive the assistance they needed to move from one place to another. Some of them may end up with vouchers for assistance, and they had an opportunity to move back into the community. They also were aware once they moved back in the community, those who were moving back into homes, choosing to move into homes, that the tax base may go up. So they have an opportunity to receive training along the way to understand how to budget. And so we put a lot of things in place, and it's still in place because we're still in the growing process. And although there are signs of improvement in the community, this is a process. You're in it for the long haul.
Right.
And so patience is key, and it's not always going to be easy.
Thank you, Debbie. I think there are a lot of things that you could take away from that, and especially, not setting people up to fail and having patience are all. One of the things you said brings me to the next question, and then we'll turn it over to some questions from the crowd. When you all went out, there's 8 of you. In Phoenix, when we were talking last week, you talked about that idea of how you felt having other Voyagers were real important, and that having one to serve as a token voice for the neighborhood just didn't cut it, because one person can't represent the entire voice, and having folks of different genders were important. Talk a little bit about your experience with having multiple teammates on your Voyager team, and this concept of making sure that if you're doing resident engagement, you don't find one resident to serve as the spokesperson for everybody.
And particularly not the person that's already doing 1,001 things. You want to include diversity, because just as Debbie mentioned earlier, it's important to know about its location, or someone can cue in to figure out are there laws or policies, or do we need to change policies so that the taxes don't go up when these things change. And what was on one person's mind may not have been on my mind. I'm concerned about relationships and also the development of the young people, the children, and it just made more sense to not tokenize, not take one person and say, oh, I am the Northside, and you can just go through me, and now you've gotten, you can say to the public, well, we had one of them on there, we went to that one person, so it didn't work because something maybe someone else did, versus that we were inclusive in who we chose to have work this process, and it made all of the sense. We are, as a group, is what makes us community developers or builders, because we're so different, and we really are different. In our leadership training, we learned how to be community members all over, but it was important.
Can I add this? That it provided continuity for us, because in the training that we received, we all received the same training. So when someone would come to me and ask me a question, they might ask her the same question. Well, they would get sort of the same answer. So what that did for people, it provided them with, how can I say this? It provided them with security, that they were being told the truth, that they felt confident about what was happening to them and not, with them and not to them. And that provided a good place for us to start as community leaders and bringing our community in. Right. Because like Ms. Deborah said earlier, you have apathy, you have ambiguity, you have people who don't like change because they're comfortable and complacent. Mm-hmm. So when you come in with something new like that, you want continuity amongst the leaders, so that when people come to you, they're getting, substance.
Exactly. All right, let's open it up for a few questions. I saw your hand first. There's a microphone right behind you. I don't know that we need it, but we'll try and balance this.
Hi, my name is Peter Levivi, and I work as a developer of former public housing sites in the Midwest. And in every case, after we're procured, we come and we meet with the resident leadership. There's usually a president and sometimes a vice president. And we are often discouraged from talking to other people within the community that the views of the community should come through the elected representatives of the community of public housing residents. Is that the right approach to be taking? I just, hearing what you just said, I'm not sure. So is there any advice you can give me?
I like to.
Let me say this first. Well, you have to do this. One thing, you have to be in tune with your community.
Right.
See, we're not up here trying to represent some people that we don't know.
Right.
You have to know your community. You have to talk to them. You have to entertain them. You have to entertain their anger. You have to entertain, the joy of it, because a lot of people are happy about it. Some people are not. So what you have to do is know your community, so that when people like yourself come into the community, you're not getting a mixed message. You're getting a holistic view of the entire community,
Right.
based on what we know of the people who we live with and who are there with us.
I'd like to respond to him
Go ahead.
as well. One of the things that I hear you say is that you come in and you speak to the group of leaders, or those people that you've identified, but you're having a challenge dealing with people in the community. Have you tried to develop that relationship with one or two people within that meeting, and then get them, you all go together, side by side, to meet different people in the community? Have you all tried that?
We're often discouraged from doing that.
Yeah,
You-
that's interesting. I think, and we can get into this in just a little bit too. I want to take a couple other questions, but I do think it's important. I think the sort of theme of this is we disagree with that sort of
Yes.
the thing that you've been hearing.
Right.
That this really is about getting
Yes.
a more holistic view of the community. And I think one of the things that I failed to mention a little earlier, that one of the ways in which these folks work, and one of the things we work with them, is it's important for them to have the latest and greatest information on any project we're doing. And we realize that oftentimes in this work, maps are changing, ideas are changing. All of the Voyagers were issued iPads through Northside Development Group. And Angela Walker in the back of the room, who keeps Northside all straight, raise your hand, Angela. Angela makes sure they're all loaded with all the latest files, so that when they go talk to somebody about the project, they can flip through the pictures and actually show them where it's going and those kinds of things. It really helps build that sense of community and that sense of ownership. You had a question
So,
here.
could you
You go ahead. I had the lady in front of you, and then you're next. I'm sorry. She's got a mic. I've already handled that. Sorry.
Rashima Davis from the Fort Worth Y in Texas. And I wanted to know, you talked about the leadership training. Could you talk about that a little bit more? Who conducted it? How long is it? Do you regroup or check in as leaders often around that training?
Yeah.
We were trained by an incredible trainer, Stan Davis, and he's from Greer or our Greenville area. And basically we were trained on the leadership model, where the 7 of habits of effective leaders, and the Stephen Covey model. And that's also the same model that our school uses, our children use. But we were trained very well through him, and I'll let some of the other Voyagers
Well, it
share
took
some
6
more.
months, and it's ongoing. We have meetings not only with the neighborhood, but we also meet as the Voyagers, and we go over those chapters and we review them, and we keep that information fresh and at hand at all times, because it's necessary. Because this project that we're embarked upon is going to last for the next 10 to 15 years. Right. So we have to stay fresh, and we have to stay on top of what we're trying to do. So the training was excellent, and we do have reoccurring training.
And I'll add too, one of the challenges that not one of the opportunities, I guess, for this group is to figure out how do we multiply the 8 Voyagers, 10 Voyagers, into 20 Voyagers, into 30 Voyagers, and how do we bring more people in? So, gentleman back here has a question, and then Debbie, Okay, Debbie wants to finish, and then we got there.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to emphasize, he touched on it, but we're in the process of identifying additional people who desire to be Voyagers.
Right.
Now, we can't do this work all by ourselves because the community is a large community by our standards. What we do, we recruit volunteers who have an interest in being Voyagers right now, and they help us in different ways. They may help volunteer doing programs or whatever, but they've shown us an interest, and so at some point, they will be trained. And we've looked into, actually we've applied for a grant to train for Voyagers and for volunteers, to set up a pool base for volunteers to serve the entire Spartanburg area. But nevertheless, even if we don't get that grant, we will provide training for additional volunteers, Voyagers, to come in and work with us.
Based on what we've learned.
Based on what we've learned. It's tailored for us, for our community.
All right, yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Charles McDowell from Wilmington, Delaware, and I'm chairman of the board of a pre-K to 8 urban charter schools, a low-income environment. We have a large public housing project right on our border, and there is a community center that is on the other edge of the public housing project. And the Housing Authority and the Community Center and Eastside Charter School are all interested in looking into a revitalization effort. So can you step back a little bit and sort of talk about the process of, when did your organization get involved? When did you, could you just kind of give a little narrative here about, the process of how you got to the point of talking to the residents and developing a plan?
So I was fortunate in the fact that, Kathleen in the front. I was fortunate in the fact that I, early on in 1996, did community organizing in Northside. So I still had connections. In our community, we were fortunate enough to land a medical college to be built in the North Side, and that got everybody excited. That was 2009. At the time, I worked for a private foundation who was really interested and had made some small grants. I'll give Phoenix some props. If you look in the book, you'll see a mobile farmers market. Phoenix, at one of our very first community meetings, raised her hand and said, "You know what? The ice cream man has no problem coming into our neighborhood and selling ice cream to our kids. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a van that sold vegetables?" That picture of that mobile market is in your packet. That idea sort of spurned others, and we launch Harvest Park next month, which is the next step of that. We started early on. Lots of conversations have been going on for many years about Northside with stakeholders, with residents. So I don't want to come across as saying this is easy or it's quick, and it takes a long sort of, we'll call it the courting process, sort of talking with folks. And that was just sitting on porches, that was sitting in community meetings. What do you want to see in your community? Interestingly enough, in all the vision sessions we did with Northside residents, they said we want jobs for young people, we want clean and safe streets, and we want new and better housing. When we talked with our stakeholders, very similar things that were wanted there, so we really had the opportunity to blend. So it was a lot of relationship building and early on, and I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards about some of the more specifics. That's great. Debbie has her, and then Shannon, you.
Hi, I'm Debbie McLeod from the Grant Me the Wisdom Foundation and also Connect at 6800 Bel Air. I am really interested in how your board of directors is set up such that you have community members on your board. I've gotten a little bit of pushback in some of the boards that I've sat on because there is a discomfort among fundraisers and high net worth folks to have people from the community sitting next to them in a board situation. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, or that the person from the community is going to feel alienated from the group because they're not having dinner at the same place tomorrow night. I'm interested in your experience in being in that group, and if there was pushback to including the community. I mean, we're oftentimes very good at setting up advisory committees from the community, and then we have the board of directors. And putting those together, I'd like to know how that works.
I'm gonna let Debbie talk about, since she's on Northside Development Group's board, on your part about the experience, and then I'll talk a little bit about the background of how we got there, if that's fair.
A part of my reason for feeling comfortable about being on the board is because I've had experience on boards in my previous, capacities. But at the same time, I knew in my heart I had a desire to want to see, I wanted to, because it's transparent, that's one of the things that we really push, the transparency, the openness, the truthfulness. And sometimes some of these questions or some of these things that may come up may not necessarily be comfortable, but I understand what we're discussing, what the board is discussing, because we have people from all walks of life in our community. And so because of that, some things may be a challenge for us to reach out to. However, when it comes to people, we have 2 board members from the community on the board. And I'm familiar with a lot of people in the community, and so is the other board member. And so we reach out to them. We serve on the board as advocates for the community. I can't stress that enough. Right. Whatever capacity I work in the community is as an advocate for the community. And there are things that I don't know. A lot of things I don't know. I don't understand. And as I go along, I will ask questions. If I need to pull somebody aside after the meeting, I'll ask questions. If I need to pull somebody out during the meeting, I'll do that too.
Yes, you will.
Yes,
So,
you will.
so I think that question that Debbie asked is really critical to this, and I want to go back and it kind of ask how when we first started this, we really, really wanted to be different, and we wanted to make sure that we were authentic and transparent. And point blank, the only way to do that is to include residents in your leadership structure. You cannot do with when we're sitting in a boardroom making decisions for the folks who've lived there for years and years. And so I often have said early on that it's not, often when we think about this, and I've been doing organizing work for a really long time, it's how do we get residents comfortable serving on boards? It's really the opposite. It's how do we get those folks you talked about, Debbie? How do we get them comfortable opening the door to have residents sit in on their conversations? And it's not always comfortable. But this work in community development isn't always comfortable. It's not meant to. If it was easy and comfortable, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about how to do it. So that's a big important piece of our work. So Tony's going to say something, and we're going to go to Shannon. We got lots of hands up, so we're going to get to the best.
I'm going to say this real quick. You said that the people who come in have a problem sitting down with the people of the community. Well, that's the problem. You know, you have to deal with the perception and the intent, because the people are saying, you know, they don't want to sit down with me, but yet and still they want to come in here and do something to my community. So you got to change your perspective. Our executive director, I won't mention any names, but he always tells me that it's my party and that he's at my party. This is your party. I'm just a visitor, and I'm here to party with you. So that's the approach that you take when you're involving the community, and you want to go in and change a bad situation and a polite situation to a better situation. You got to engage the people. You know, you got to get past I don't want to sit next to them, and I don't want to, I'm scared of them or they're scared of me. You know, there was a saying in Spartanburg where the students weren't allowed to come over the street, the river, they called it, to engage our community. So one of the main things the Voyagers has to do is engage those students and say, no, you have to come across the river. You got to come across the street, because we are a community. I can't be afraid of you, and you can't be afraid of me for this to work.
And you will break down barriers. Remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you must be engaging, and you must develop a relationship. And I would like to get back to the gentleman over here.
We're going to get back to there, but Shannon's been sitting here with the microphone, so we're going to go there. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Shannon Longino from Atlanta, and again, I was in classes with the other people, but the other class over there with another group and some of you, but just wanted to reiterate, first of all, thank you guys. Thank you, because East Lake is the oldest of this whole process.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of piggyback to off of what you guys said. You brought up some very valid points. Number one, what you do is a volunteer basis.
Yes.
You don't get paid.
No.
And what developers and people that are interested in the communities need to keep in mind at all times is it's going to be a process. You can either work with the process or work against the process. If you work against the process, you're not helping yourselves. You're delaying what it is you came to do. Be smart about the approach. These volunteers, and they're in every community that you will approach. They're all for the good. They can work for your good, because normally you would have to pay consultants. Normally you would have to bring people on staff to do studies. But you have people at your disposal who live it each and every day. You can't get better experience than that. You're trying to get people to understand your concept, and you want to sell an idea to someone who may or may not understand your concept. But to go in open-minded and be willing to come out of your comfort zone and understand that the people in the communities, bottom line, will carry out and be a part of your team. It's a partnership. Awesome. You need them to help get the word out consistently. Because my grandmother, Eva Davis, that you've seen in the video over and over again, always taught, when you do things in order, you get things in order. You can't go into a project with millions of dollars, communities that are going to affect people, in which you go home to your nice homes, apartments, and that's the view that the residents have.
Yes.
Or you're coming over here talking to me and you're going back to your nice home, getting it right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's their perception up front. And your thing is to break down that, to not get so fixated on you, but the actual deal itself. How is it going to benefit everyone? And you go in, you get them, they're investors as well. If they don't buy into, your deal doesn't happen. If they don't buy into, they're the investors. They have to invest in time. They have to get the word out. They have to deliver your message. So at the end of the day, your volunteers, your boards, your community leaders, some people call them associations. We had associations and planning committees. Planning committee meant have everyone that will be involved, stakeholders in the planning process. Not after you've made a decision.
That's right.
Not after you've gotten the money and go waving it in their faces.
Right.
But in the planning process from beginning to end.
Yes.
Start with the idea and the concept, and take them from the idea and the concept. Together you go get the money. Together you build the community, and together you get the results.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, thank you. Real quick check on time, and I had the unenviable task of keeping this to an hour. So unless we've got lots of other questions. So here's my suggestion. We all have some worksheets at your table. You can take those with you. The Voyagers will be we've got 15 minutes more, so don't think about I'm over. I'm just trying to make a plan for a little bit. The Voyagers will be at the little reception where we're standing around. If you want to fill out that form and ask for feedback, the form basically just says, what do you want to do? Who does it affect? How do you want to engage them? If you want to ask the Voyagers what they think about your strategy, we'll all be standing at by the Northside Development Group, okay? So we're not going to do our group work, although I'd love to sit here and keep organizing this for a while. But anyway, somebody, you had a question next, right there. Yes. Do you have a microphone? Yes. Who else? She had her hand up a while ago, so I'm doing the best I can here. You're next in the back, and then I'll go. Yes, ma'am.
My question was, is there like a neighborhood? I think you may have addressed it, Shannon. But is there a neighborhood group in the community, or do you serve as the neighborhood group? And then the second question is, how do you stay motivated? The group that I work with in Boston has been at it for about 10 years, and they're also volunteers. And sometimes, like, some people won't show out for meetings, or they get discouraged. So how do you guys, as a group, stay involved and committed to the community that you're representing?
Let me say this. We do have a neighborhood association, but we're also tied with, we have Voyagers, who are, as was mentioned earlier, their leaderships in the public housing area. So there are different little groups there, but the Voyagers have come together and brought all these entities together. So when we're speaking across the board, and the motivation comes and goes way back, especially purpose-built communities sharing with us how they did and what they wanted, what they could have done different, and all of that. Just that's the motivation. But the real key is seeing your community come together, seeing your community grow and just appreciating the beauty as it springs up.
I'll also add one of the things we often talk. I promise I'll live. One of the things I know I'm gonna be in trouble. One of the things that we do too, or that we talk about oftentimes, is making sure we do what we say we're gonna do, and promising, the Harvest Park's gonna be developed. Making sure we do that, and for us as an organization, not speaking for the Voyagers, that is critical, and not thinking we've got to do everything at one time, but finding those easy wins and continuing to create momentum. Ms. Moore,
I'm going
sorry.
to be real here when it comes to residents. You're going to have residents who, if they've been coming, on a consistent basis, most of them will continue to come. Unfortunately, a lot of those residents are getting older and older, so we need new blood. And so we are recruiting people, but they are not consistent. Don't be discouraged. Those that are coming, encourage them. Just keep encouraging them. Remember, this is a process. Just keep encouraging them to bring a friend when they come back again. And hopefully you'll get more people coming. But we've had to recently reorganize our neighborhood association because most of us were a part of it. But these were older people that had been dedicated in the past and could no longer do it like they wanted to do it. So we had to reorganize. And because of that, our current president is Tony, and it's growing. This community is growing. But just like all meetings that we have, you'll get some of the same people constantly. And then you'll bring in, people will come in out of curiosity, and people will tell us that they're coming and they may not show up. But at least we're feeding them information. Right. And feeding them information, we will be able to get people to come. They may not come all the time, but they will come, and they come out, especially with food, but we can't always use food. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can't always use food. We want them to invest in where they are, to buy into what they want, a better place for their children.
Excellent.
And what I'll say
Evan's
is,
telling me we got 10 minutes. Go.
I just want to say this. That's on the piggyback of Ms. Deborah. It's
what I said,
very
10
important.
minutes.
When you start to engage your community and you start telling them things, like Curt said, from the inception of this, we started talking before there was any dirt dug up. And when they start to seeing the dirt being moved, they'll come to you and they'll say, "You told me about this. You said it." So what you're doing then as community leaders, or whatever your position may be, is you're building trust. You're building trust because they're going to believe you then. When the next time you come to them and tell them something, they're going to say, "Okay, I can believe what he says. He hasn't lied to me yet." So that's another thing. Don't over-deliver, don't over-promise or under-deliver, and you'll always be in a good place.
There you go. Question in the very back of the room, and we're going to try and knock out some really quickly. I've got 10 minutes left.
I really appreciate getting a sense of the kinds of investments that you all are making in this process. The reality is that many of us get to come to spaces like this and be paid to be here. You guys are making investments above and beyond the other things going on in your lives. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the experience of being Voyagers fits into the other things that you have going on in your lives, whether it's work or family or hobbies or other things.
I started as a barber in my community. So there were times when I felt like Dr. Phil, Ann Landers, even Dr. Ruth. So when people sat down in my chair, I got it all. I got hit from all angles. So it became, incumbent on me to say, "Well, Tony, you can do something." And don't ever believe that one person can't make a difference, because for years I've been over there for 23 years. And for a long time, and I've only been in this about 8 years. So, for a long time I was just kind of like out of the way, didn't want to be bothered. But when people kept coming, and if you know that there's something that you can do, it's incumbent upon you to do it. So that's how I got involved. Yeah. And I put on the broccoli soup that day when we was trying to get the healthy food truck to come.
That's right.
I was out there dancing around in broccoli. So people saw that and they said, "Oh, cool, if he's willing to go out there like that, let me go buy some of these vegetables and let me help make my community better." Yeah. So it starts right there in your community with you. You can't make a difference.
Yeah. And I want to just reiterate that point for those of us that think about this work. You have to think about the fact that this is above and beyond the normal life, and trying to make opportunities, whether it's incentivizing 2 days worth of community surveying with a stipend, whether it's making sure we meet around lunchtime and provide food because we know folks have to eat, trying to make it as convenient and being as respectful as possible and making sure, and I think it was Shannon that said, we're either going to pay consultants to do it or we're going to get the real information from the community, and figuring out that balance is great. Yes, sir.
So Tony, several times the group has talked about getting organized, and you're the president. So what does organized mean? What's the organizational structure? So talk a little bit about that. And then, what's worked and what's not worked.
Okay, well, it's like with any other organization. We have a president, vice president, a treasurer, a secretary, and all of that, and we work together. I demand that the people that I work be competent. I'm not going to do everything. I have a lot to do. I have a lot on my plate, and communication. As a leader, you don't have to do everything. You have to be good at delegating. So for me, it's easy for me to say, Miss Deborah, I need you to do this. She's an advisor. Phoenix, can you do this for me as a Voyager more than a neighborhood association member? So you have to be that kind of person that want to get things done. You gotta be sometimes adamant. Some people are not gonna like you. They're gonna be mad. You're gonna be called names, but that's irrelevant. That's not the end game. So you just have to be that way about it. And it's working for me. Our neighborhood meetings are now, we started out with like the same 7 people every month, like 6, 7 people. Now it's like 40, 50. And we're growing. I want that room full, and I'm not gonna stop until I get it full, because we have to have the people's coordination, cooperation, and we want them to know this isn't about us, it's about you. And that's what our partners have decided, that it's not about them and what they want to do, it's about what the community wants. So, and if they ever change that, then they can count me out.
And we have to also have a different look at what we consider a neighborhood association, because a person may have a gift or talent that they provide, and that's great. That person is a part of your association. That's an organization where you're realizing your resources in your community. And I may not be there the whole year. Maybe I can be there a month out of a year. And so this is what we have to look at, the new way of it. It's not one way or the other on how to do this, or who the Voyagers are, or who your association is.
And remember this, we have other kinds of meetings too. We have community meetings. That's when people from throughout the community can come together. And one of the best things that we had was the planning of the charrettes with our developers. And it was a 3-day process. So it was able to grab hold to people who were working different shifts. And it was all day, and it was awesome because everybody had a chance to participate. Because all the residents had an opportunity to participate, that made the difference.
And not only that, the ideas that they expressed at the charrettes, and they came in and said, I want to see this, I want to see that. Right. Well, when our master planner and our builders came and architect came back with the plan, they were in there. People said, well, that's my idea. That's my idea. So that even made it more trusting for the neighbors to come in and say, okay, we cool with what you guys are doing, because they saw their ideas on the board.
Yep. All right, we've got time for one more question. I'm sorry, and you've got the microphone. So I thought, you have the microphone. I'm so sorry. No, the lady behind you has the microphone. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. So we're going to have 2 questions, and you're going to ask one and then the other. All right, go for it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I can really tell that you are very passionate and really are behind what the residents and what they really want. And I know I'm in charge of resident engagement at the public housing site that we're going to redevelop. And however, we've encountered residents that our leaders are be it that they're on the tenant council or something, but sometimes they're working more in their own self-interest rather than in the interests of the community. And we've had some trouble. We do see new leaders emerging, and they've been very supportive and helpful, and have also spoken on behalf of the changes that residents want. But sometimes some of the older leadership, if they're not on board, they almost kind of try to extort us in a little bit of a way to try to get money for some of their pet projects and things like that. And I'm just being real. This is what happens. Yeah. This is what happens. And so I was wondering if you have any advice about how do we still want to work with people and not shut down the old leadership. How do we maybe get some of the new resident leaders or other residents to continue to help us and still have some of the old leadership on, but know that we're not going to feed into these little self-interest things that they want. They need to think more broadly about what's best for the entire community.
Well, you engaged the prior leaders in the community as we have. If they're not leading, they can always be advisors. They can always give you insight. You know, you got to remember your past in order to know where you're going. So we have people in our community that were past leaders, and I refer to them. I say, well, how did you do that? How did you do that? There's a place for everyone, and you don't have to, you know, nix out anyone. You can include everyone, and find that place for them. Find out what their skills are. Find out what you can get from them, and do that.
All right, last question. The lady right beside her, please.
Hi, I'm with Youth Uprising in Oakland, and we do a lot of personal transformation and leadership development with young people. And I was wondering if you had youth who are involved as Voyagers, and if not, if you envision that as being something that would be an appropriate role for young people to play as part of the community process.
We think we're you.
Yeah.
Yes. Young people besides the three of you.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
A little bit younger.
A little bit younger, yes. That is key, because they're keeping it alive. It's keeping the dream alive.
They're my motivation.
And right, and they're going to be coming after us. Although we'll be together now, they need to learn the training and the experience as well, so that they can continue the process. And the legacy goes on, and the beat goes on. One of those things.
Well, we are the experience in one sense, and they are the now. So we understand that path, but we have to move over and allow them to be the now and the future. And so I think that's very important to know, that you don't want to have to try to do this until you're 99. You want to make it so that it can be replicated, so you can continue it. And that's another thing we really learned from purpose-built community, is that you know, make it so that it can continue and it will flow, and you can do the future and build the future and remembering the past. You don't want to get rid of the people that you had in the past, because they have experience. You know, you want to build on that.
Yeah, thank you all. I want to do a couple of housekeeping things. There are a lot of questions, and I'm sorry if you had the microphone and we didn't. I messed that one up, so that was my fault. Come find us at 4:15, ask your questions. I hope you'll join me in giving these amazing folks a hearty round of applause.